What's going on, beautiful jellyfish? It's Tracy. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time today to hang out with me. I really appreciate it. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing my budget EDH cards video. This is part 13, which is pretty insane. I do not have part 14 planned, so it will probably be a little while before that comes out, but it will definitely happen because I love talking about budget cards. I totally understand that not everyone can just dump a ton of money on Magic cards. These are some budget cards that are under $1 that you can run. And the fun part also about this video is some of these cards, you can even get the foil for under $1, which is so incredibly cool. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. All sorts of colors that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking some multicolored cards in this video. Let's just make this a little bit bigger because your girl, she's blind. She doesn't have her glasses on. Did that just make it smaller? I feel like that just made it smaller when I zoomed in. What? That's not how that's supposed to work. Okay, let's talk about Go for the Throat. I feel like removal and your mana base are two of the most important things to spend money on and to invest in. And also too, there's just so many possibilities out there. It can be just really tricky to find out what are good cards, but Go for the Throat is a really solid option. It is not artifact creature, but it's at instant speed, which is really nice, and it's only 2 mana, which is really, really awesome. So this is overall a really solid removal card. I think also too, sometimes these spot removal cards can kind of like, they're more on the more specific side, and this definitely is because it's not artifact, but I think you're going to find that you can target plenty of things. Zelda is trying to burrow herself into my notebook currently. Someone explain that to me. I don't understand. Okay. I don't know how I discovered this card, but Guided Passage. This is a really interesting card. So you reveal cards in your library. An opponent chooses from among them a creature, a land, and a non-creature, and a non-land. So there's 4 cards. Wait. Chooses from among them a creature, a land, a non-creature, a non-land. So you get 4 things, basically, for 3 mana, which is really cool. And you put them into your hand, and then for the rest, you just shuffle your library, and you kind of get to start fresh in that regard. I think this card is really interesting. I feel like if you're playing these colors, why not give it a shot? I just think it's really interesting. Or maybe if you're playing a 5-color deck, and you're feeling extra adventurous. This card reminds me a little bit of Unexpected Results. It's, like, obviously a little bit different, but it reminds me of this a little bit. Teamer. Is that the color combination that this card is in? That sounds right. Teamer? I don't know. Okay, so really funny story about this card. Okay, Torens, Fist of the Angels. As I was gathering, notes for this video, and as I was putting everything, and organizing it and all that stuff, this card came up, and I was like, oh my god, I feel like I should put this in Rain. It's really cool. So it's 3 mana for a 2/2, and then it's got Training. So whenever this creature attacks with another creature with greater power, put a +1/++ counter on that creature, which is really cool if you're playing things with like multiple powers, especially things that are larger than this, which I'm thinking through my Reen deck, there definitely are. And then when you cast a creature spell, you create a 1/1 soldier. And it's got Training, which is super cool. I think this card is really cool. I feel like I really like the aspect of like the little bit of token gen in this deck, and in this card. And it's just a 3 mana 2/2, which is really cool. So I think this card is really awesome. I'm going to set this card aside actually and pick one up for Reen because I think this would be really a cool card to put in there. And it's budget, which we love. Okay, this card might be a little bit more of a playgroup dependent card, might be a card that you put in on your sideboard or something if you're feeling really fancy, and that is Ravnica at War. So this is exile all multicolored permanents. The best case scenario I would say for running this card is to probably put this in a mono white colored deck. That way you're not hitting any of your things and you're only hitting your opponent's stuff. I feel like this card is a little bit more on the narrow side because it does you only want it to impact your opponents, and it is exile, which is really incredibly strong for 4 mana, but it is only multicolored things. But if you're playing, like, if someone were to play this against my Reen deck, I would be totally hosed and like not in a good position at all. So definitely depends on your matchup, but if you're playing with people who play frequent multicolored stuff and you have a mono white deck, or maybe you have like a white and another color deck, this might not be a bad card to throw in there. It's super affordable, which is great. Oh my gosh, this card is so cool, Sunder Shaman. I actually have this card in Reen, and it's like really, really good. And I'm like shocked that this card is literally 4 mana for a 5/5, which is already really cool. It can't be blocked by more than 1 creature, which is already great as well. So it's got a lot of things going for it. And then whenever it deals combat damage, you get to destroy artifact or enchantment. So you basically get an aura shards stapled onto this creature. And it's a 5/5, and it can't be blocked by more than 1 creature, right? Can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. Yeah. This card's awesome. This card is so incredibly cool. If you're playing these 2 colors, I would definitely recommend throwing this card in there. 4 mana 5/5, man. Don't underestimate that. That is super good. Okay. Oh my gosh, funny story about this card. Flood of Recollection. I almost referred to this card as Flood of Reflection, and I couldn't find it for a second. I was like, oh, it's because the word is Recollection. This card is cool. It's a really cool bring back effect. So it is 2 mana at sorcery, which is pretty good. And you return instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand, and then you exile this card. I'm like blown away by how inexpensive this card is. And it's all like inexpensive cost wise, but also mana wise. Only 2 mana to get something back from your graveyard to your hand. It is a little bit narrow in that it's only instant sorceries, but if you're playing a ton of instants and sorceries, you're gonna want a way to find and get those back. And then you do have to exile this, but honestly, whatever. This card is so incredibly cool. I came across this card when I was looking for cards for Tamishi, and Paul was like, this is a really good card. And I looked it up and found it's like 10 cents. This card is awesome. If you're playing a ton of instants and sorceries, even if you're not though, even if you're playing like 15 or whatever, you know, this is a good card to have around. You're going to want to cast your stuff again, you know? Okay, the next card is Magus of the Abyss. It's a 4 mana 4/3. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, so keep in mind it is each player, so this does impact you, destroy target non-artifact creature that player controls. It can't be regenerated. So this is so cool. I really like this card a lot. I think that it works best. It's a very cool card that you can synergize with your deck. So what I mean by that is you can run things that are like, when this creature dies, so-and-so happens or whatever. And then you can kind of like play that up with this card. So it's like a free sack outlet basically. But not only is it a free sack outlet, everybody else has to sacrifice, everyone else gets to destroy a thing. Sorry, it's not sacrifice, it's destroy. It is non-artifact, so similar to Go for the Throat, you can't target their artifact creatures. So if they are playing like a colorless deck or something, I'm not really going to do a whole lot if they have a lot of those artifact creatures, but it hits everything else unless it's indestructible, but that would be asking for, I think, a little bit too much. I think this card is incredibly strong. It's definitely a card that you put it down, and even if it lasts for like a turn cycle, you're in a pretty, you know, happy position. Because I think sometimes people are like, oh, it just gets destroyed in like a turn cycle or 2 turn cycles. It's like, yeah, you're still getting value off of this, and it's only a 4 mana 4/3, which is really not that bad for what it does. I think this card is incredibly strong. It can help you and you should play this in a deck where it's going to help you by you destroying your own things and you getting some sort of benefit from it. And you get to destroy other things. So, it's a great card. Okay, the next card is Trail of Evidence. For my people who are casting a lot of instants and sorceries, Trail of Evidence is a great card. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you get to investigate, which means you get a clue token. Get a clue. Anyone still making those jokes? I don't know. I feel like they're still relevant, right? You're still making clue tokens. That makes me think of the movie. What was it called? Get a Clue with Lindsay Lohan. Does anyone remember that movie? That movie was like, I loved that movie when I was a kid. Anyways, so you cast an instant sorcery spell, you get to investigate, you get a clue. There's really not a whole lot to say. It's a really good card if you're playing a ton of instant sorceries. I'd play this. I'd also play the card that we talked about earlier, the Flood of Recollection. Ooh, some really cool stuff there. I love that. Great card. Okay. Oh, I love this card. I have this card in Reen, and it is so cool. And that is Maja, Bretagard Protector. I was looking at cards for this deck for Reen when I was building it, and I stumbled across this card. It's also in Throne of Eldraine, which is like one of my favorite sets. And I was like, wow. I was like, this card is really cool. I was like, it does a lot of different things, and I think overall it's just really strong. So it is 5 mana for a 2/3, which when you look at that doesn't seem that good. But other creatures get +1/+1, which is really cool. And then whenever land ETBs, you create a 1/1 token, which is awesome. It does a lot of different things. I kind of almost wish this card was like 4 mana, but I feel like I understand why it's 5. I also think too, you're playing this with green, so you're probably mana accelerating a decent amount. You just kind of have to be a little careful of that double white. But overall, I think this card is really cool if you're playing this Lesnia color combination. And you just like, it doesn't really matter what you're also doing. Like if you're playing tokens, this is like a perfect card to be playing in tokens because then your tokens get buffed, which is also really cool. Like I like the fact that you play a land and then you get a 1/1, but with this, they're now 2/2. So you're getting that little bit of extra value. When I was playing Reen the other day, I was just realizing, I was like, this card is so cool because it buffs all of your stuff and it just leaves you with tokens. Overall, it does two things that I really enjoy. I like this card a lot. And the last card that I would like to talk about is a card that I truly cannot believe is as inexpensive as it is. Hold up, first we gotta make this card bigger because I cannot see that at all. Gosh. The screen is like about my arm's length away and I'm struggling to see it. I wear glasses normally, so I can't really see a lot. That is Precognition Field. You may look at the top card of your library. Could do it at any time, which is awesome. I love that information. You may cast it if it's an instant or sorcery. Oh my gosh, I've talked about like 3 really good blue cards in this video that like if you were building a heavy instant or sorcery deck, I would definitely do this. But for 3 mana, you can exile the top card of your library. I like this card a lot. I think it's cool. I think if you're playing a ton of instant sorceries, it's perfect. You can cast it off the top, which is great. You get that little bit of advantage. But if let's just say you're in the late game, you've got so many lands. You are like, this is not what I need right now. 3 mana you can exile. You could do this as many times as you want, which is also really cool. You don't have to tap it, which is awesome. So you can just exile all those things. And you're like, okay, cool. I'll just exile that land that I don't need. And then you can get something else back. Or you can get something else instead and then cast it from the top, which is really cool. Or if it's something that you just don't need at the time, maybe it's not a land, maybe it's a different instant or sorcery spell that you're like, I do not need this. I have 3 counter spells in my hand. I don't need that extra counter spell. Let me exile it. That is super cool. I think this card is really awesome. I think if you're playing heavy instant sorceries, this is definitely a card to be on the lookout for. So yeah, guys, that is everything. Those were it for 10 more budget cards. I would really love to know what are some of your favorite budget cards, and they might make an appearance in a future part. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you're not already, and I'll catch you in my next one.